أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. Verse number 119 of Surah Nisa. وَلَأُضِلَّنَّهُمْ وَلَأُمَنِّيَنَّهُمْ وَلَآمُرَنَّهُمْ فَلَيُبَتِّكُنَّ آذَانَ الْأَنْعَامِ وَلَآمُرَنَّهُمْ فَلَيُغَيِّرُنَّ خَلْقَ اللَّهِ وَمَنْ يَتَّخِذِ الشَّيْطَانَ وَلِيًّا مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ فَقَدْ خَسِرَ خُسْرَانًا مُبِينًا. And I will lead them astray and give them false hopes and prompt them to slit the ears of cattle, and I will prompt them to alter Allah's creation. Whoever takes Satan as a guardian instead of Allah has certainly incurred a manifest loss. This is an explanation of the strategies of the shaitan against human being. As it was mentioned in the previous verse, لَعَنَهُ اللَّهُ وَقَالَ لَأَتَّخِذَنَّ مِنْ عِبَادِكَ نَصِيبًا مَفْرُوضًا. He said, I will take from your servants a determined, a settled share. I take them for myself as my followers and take them with me wherever you send me, wherever you send me. Now here is an explanation for that. وَلَأُضِلَّنَّهُمْ وَلَأُمَنِّيَنَّهُمْ وَلَآمُرَنَّهُمْ up to the very end. Well, it's not clear whether Shaitan is informing God by this statement about his stratagem, or it is something in his own heart, and Allah is actually mentioning it for us. Allah is telling us what was in his heart when he was driven away from the vicinity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whichever the case, there are three things mentioned here, three actions mentioned here by Shaitan. لَأُضِلَّنَّهُمْ وَلَأُمَنِّيَنَّهُمْ وَلَآمُرَنَّهُمْ. I lead them astray, I give them false hopes, and I command them or prompt them. Now these three, of course, أُضِلَّنَّهُمْ includes the other two as well. However, because they are very important, Allah has mentioned them separately as the most remarkable cases of idlal or misleading of Shaitan. So Shaitan is elaborating and explaining how he shall take his settled share, nasiban mafruḍa. And these are his traps, as he has mentioned it here. Now, the verbs, the three verbs here, which actually is a quotation from Shaitan or from his thoughts, are actually mentioned with additional emphasis. Instead of لَأُضِلُّهُمْ لَأُضِلَّنَّهُمْ, instead of لَأُمَنِّيهِمْ أُمَنِّيَنَّهُمْ. So these are, of course, devices for emphasis and hyperbole of this enormity and extent of an action. So it shows his solemn pledge, the extent of his animosity, that he is stressing that I will do this, I will mislead them, I will give them false hopes in such a way. And this is what he said, by your might, in Surah Sad and other surahs, by your might I will surely pervert them all. Of course, illa, except a few that he mentions here. And the other thing is that he is, in a sense, as he is talking to God, or as he is having these thoughts, harboring them in his heart, it shows the extent of his deception about himself, that he thinks that he has the power to do it, while all power, he knows all power lies in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but he said it in such an arrogant manner, knowing that Allah has given him respite. And he supposes that he is doing this independent of God, not knowing that Allah has allowed it as a test for people to determine where their places should be on the day in the next life. Now going to these three actions that he has mentioned here. أُضِلَّنَّهُمْ أُمَنِّيَنَّهُمْ آمُرَنَّهُمْ. أُضِلَّنَّهُمْ, I will mislead them, is of course apparently referring to the incorrect beliefs, worldviews, rituals that people may follow, and anything false in ideas that people may have about God, about themselves, about the world. These are all misleadings of shaitan, or the lanna. And as we discussed it before, كُتِبَ عَلَيْهِ أَنَّهُ مَنْ تَوَلَّاهُ فَأَنَّهُ يُضِلُّهُ. It is written that whoever follows him, who will mislead him. So this is one. وَذَلَّنَّهُمْ, in their thoughts, in their actions, in their ideas, in their judgments. Of course, it's all because it's all if the heart harbors evil. Otherwise, of course, shaitan has no way inside. أُمَنِّيَنَّهُمْ, give them false hopes. False hopes, in Tafsir of Surah, he says, Al-amani al-batila. The false hopes which are void, which have no reality, like very long life, like that there will be no life after this life, so do whatever you want. And this is one of the reasons that Allah says people deny akhirah. بَلْ يُرِيدُ الْإِنسَانِ لِيَفْجُرَ أَمَامَهُ. Man wants to do evil in his life, in what comes in his life. Then for that reason, he said, oh, who knows if there is a day of judgment or not. يَسْأَلُ أَيَّانَ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. When is the day of judgment? And this is a sort of metaphorical saying that there is no, it's a rhetorical question. بَلْ يُرِيدُ الْإِنسَانُ لِيَفْجُرَ أَمَامَهُ يَسْأَلُ أَيَّانَ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Yes, when is the day of judgment? No one has seen it. So these are the false hopes that shaitan gives to mankind. Taking life of this world as the end instead of as means. As it is, the life of this world is means to the next life. However, shaitan gives us false hope that it's all here. Strive for what is in this life. Follow what pleases you, not what benefits you. These are the false hopes that shaitan gives us. وَلَأُمَنِّيَنَّهُمْ وَلَآمُرَنَّهُمْ. I command them. Now the translation says prompt them. It's a nice translation, but amurannahum literally means I command them. And this is, again, a symptom of his arrogance. He knows that no one can command anything in this life. No command should be followed as against the command of God. Allah lahul khalqu wal amr. Creation and command belongs to him. Of course, this has other meaning as well. But he knows that no command must be obeyed if it is against the command of God, and he says, no, I will do that. I will command them to do things that you do not like them to do. Why God does not like us to do certain things? Because it harms us. Nothing can harm Allah, it harms us. And then, as an example of what type of command he gives certain actions which were prompted by him at the time of Jahiliyyah. Allah gives those examples for us. وَلَآمُرَنَّهُمْ فَلَيُبَتِّكُنَّ آذَانَ الْأَنْعَامِ. I will command them, and they cut or slit the ears of the cattle. يُبَتِّكُنَّ bakata or bakkata, both means to slit or to cut, cutting or slitting the ears. The verb is to cut or dissect, specifically used for body organs. Now in Majma, of course, it says adhan al-an'am, the ears of the cattle. In Majma, there's a hadith from Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam. He says that it was not slitting. They didn't use to slit it. They used to cut it altogether. And that was a sign. In Tafsir of Surah, of course, in all Tafsir this is mentioned. He says that as an explanation of this statement, they used to, if the camel gave birth to 5 calves, after that they cut or slit, of course, as we had in the hadith, they actually cut the ear of the camel and dedicate it for God. And this is what was called bahira. And there was, of course, other types of rituals in their custom, and they attributed all that to Allah, and these were harmful rituals. I don't want to go into details of that because that takes us away from the subject, but they were harmful rituals. They wasted the ni'matullah. لَآمُرَنَّهُمْ فَلَيُبَتِّكُنَّ آذَانَ الْأَنْعَامِ. He says they used to cut or slit the ear of a camel which had given birth to 5 calves, and then if the 5th one was a male calf, they made it haram. They made any benefit of that haram for themselves. And this is what is mentioned in another verse: مَا جَعَلَ اللَّهُ مِنْ بَحِيرَةٍ وَلَا صَائِبَةٍ وَلَا وَصِيلَةٍ وَلَا هَامٍ وَلَكِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا يَفْتَرُونَ عَلَى اللَّهِ الْكَذِبَ. Now, of course, this is a very specific and tangible example of how the last 2 stages translated into action. آمُرَنَّهُمْ فَلَيُبَتِّكُنَّ آذَانَ الْأَنْعَامِ. But the problem is not specifically these actions. It is what they did, taking another hukm, another ruling, another command, instead of command of God, and following it, saying that this is the command of God, or even not that, not saying that. This was shirk, isn't it? I explained the meaning of shirk previously. Challenging Allah in His authority. This is what Shaitan says. You challenge the authority of God. God says, for example, fornication is haram. Why is it haram? Let people enjoy. Let the young people enjoy themselves. God says drinking is haram. Why it is haram? Let people drink and enjoy. A hukm against the hukm of Allah is shirk. If the people actually challenge, not disobey. Disobedience is something else. If, for example, someone knows that drinking is haram, but he does it and then asks forgiveness, or knowing that this is a sin, but he cannot or she cannot resist, that's a sin. But if we say, no, this ruling is wrong, it shouldn't be like that, and we move out of the authority of God and resort to another authority, that is shirk. This is the meaning of shirk, which are discussed in these verses in Surah and Nisa. So it's a symbolic of a greater underlying trend. It's not just cutting or slitting the ears of the cattle. It is serving imaginary gods and following imaginary practices. In Surah An-Nahl, it says, وَلَا تَقُولُوا لَمَا تَصِفُ أَلْسِنَتُكُمْ هَذَا حَلَالٌ وَهَذَا حَرَامٌ لِتَفْتَرُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ الْكَذِبِ. Do not say, asserting falsely with your tongues, this is lawful and this is unlawful, to fabricate lies against God. Indeed, those who fabricate lies against God will not be felicitous. So this is an example of challenging the authority of God. And this is what Shaitan prompts us to do. Three things. First, أُذِلَّنَّهُمْ gives us false ideas. To follow false ideas. أُمَنِّيَنَّهُمْ give us false hopes. آمُرَنَّهُمْ give us false commands. And one example of that was mentioned here. And the other example, which is very general, وَلَآمُرَنَّهُمْ فَلَيُغَيِّرُنَّ خَلْقَ اللَّهِ. And I will command them, and they will change, they alter the creation of God. Now, some commentators say this is another example for what they used to do, cutting the ear or branding or things like that. Because branding in itself, it has no problem. However, branding and then attaching to it certain rituals, which Allah said, and we have to be very careful about the rituals that we do. We know that in different customs, about certain things there are different rituals. However, attributing those rituals to God and following rituals which in a sense challenge the authority of God, that is when the problem comes. لَيُغَيِّرُنَّ خَلْقَ اللَّهِ. Some people have said this is physical, like the slitting. Even some people have said that, for example, shaving beard is the altering the creation of God, which we know it's not. I mean, we do certain things which in our body, remove hairs, things like that. This is not تغيير خلق الله. We cut our hair. يغيرن خلق الله. خلق الله is what Allah has created in us as for following the right path. And this is what it is reported from Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam. He said alayhi salam, يغيرن خلق الله means يريد دين الله وأمره. They changed the religion of God. We know that the religion, of course, is our belief that God has one religion, which is preached by all prophets. But we know that that one religion has been changed, distorted, altered regarding at least the previous prophets, like about Moses alayhi salam, about Jesus alayhi salam. That's why we follow Islam, because we believe that they are altered. And this is what Shaitan is more expert in, changing them, not rejecting it, but changing it in a manner that it actually makes it deplete of all its spirit and sense. And also the same thing is mentioned in Tafsir of Surah, that this is actually an explanation of the verse in Surah Ar-Rum, فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا لَا تَبْدِيلَ لِخَلْقِ اللَّهِ. this فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا, this Deenul Hanif is Fitratullah, is creation of Allah, is the way it has created us. And if we follow that, we fulfill our creation, we fulfill our targets, our ends. And there should not be any change in this Khalqullah. La tabdila la Khalqullah. And also, the Imam actually mentioned after that statement, ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ. This is the firm religion, firm path. Okay. Then the following statement in the verse says, وَمَنْ يَتَّخِذِ الشَّيْطَانَ وَلِيًّا مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ فَقَدْ خَسِرَ خُسْرَانًا مُبِينًا. Whoever takes shaitan as a guardian instead of Allah. Wali, of course, we know, is guardian, is ally, is someone that we obey, is wali. Someone to whom we command is wali as well, or follows our commands. Here it may mean leader, whoever follows the leads of the shaitan. In some of the tafsir, some of the commentators have said that وَمَنْ يَتَّخِذِ الشَّيْطَانَ وَلِيًّا مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ could have been stated in a different way. For example, وَمَنْ يَكُنَ الشَّيْطَانُ لَهُ وَلِيًّا. Whoever shaitan is his wali. Instead of saying whoever takes shaitan as a wali, he says that this actually wants to emphasize that there is no wali apart from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And shaitan is assumed to be a wali. But maybe other verses of the Quran does not confirm this or agree with this view. Like, for example, in Surah An-Nahl, we have تَاللَّهِ لَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا إِلَىٰ أُمَمٍ مِّن قَبْلِكَ فَزَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ أَعْمَالَهُمْ. By God, we have certainly sent messengers to nations before you, but shaitan made their deeds seem decorous to them. فَهُوَ وَلِيُّهُمُ الْيَوْمِ. So he is their master today. So wali here, in this verse, means master, leader, or the one whom they should follow. So there is no difference actually. Now here it says, وَمَنْ يَتَّخِذِ الشَّيْطَانَ وَلِيًّا مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ, instead of Allah, to clarify and emphasize the contrast between the two paths. The path of shaitan and the path of Allah are quite different. It's diametrically opposite each other. And there's always an alternative to God's path, which is shaitan, and to shaitan's path, which is Allah's path. خَسَرَ خُسْرَانًا مُبِينًا, has actually incurred a manifest loss. What is manifest loss? In Tafsir of Surah, he says manifest loss is to lose not the benefit of, is to lose the capital. We may have lost in our benefits. For example, we want to sell something, we have bought it £100 and we sell it £100, or we have sold it £90. We have made a loss, we have incurred a loss. This is khusran. But he says khusranun mubin is to lose your £100 completely. And that is actually the case with us. We will lose our capital, our soul. فَقَدْ خَسَرَ خُسْرَانًا مُبِينًا. In Tafsir Maturidi, he says that they lose in this world on the lawful benefits which they have made unlawful to themselves due to their rituals. And in the hereafter, due to the consequences of following Shaitan's lead instead of God's guidance. So Khusran al-Mubin is to lose in this world and to lose in the next world. And it is actually, in many instances, true that following certain rituals, certain practices, although it may give us some pleasure, but it make us lose lots of benefits in this life. Alcoholic people, for example. Or if we have promiscuous society, although it's freedom, pleasure, everything, but we know that at the end, the society will lose in this life, and of course in the hereafter, as it has said. And then two other things, or two overarching stratagems of Shaitan mentioned here: يَعِدُهُمْ وَيُمَنِّيهِمْ وَمَا يَعِدُهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ إِلَّا غُرُورًا. He makes them promises and gives them false hopes, yet Shaitan does not promise them anything but delusion. The main strategy of Shaitan is appealing to our imaginative faculty. يَعِدُهُمْ وَيُمَنِّيهِمْ, giving promises about future, what I'm going to do, what I'm going to achieve, and also giving false hopes. The difference between يَعِدُهُمْ وَيُمَنِّيهِمْ in Tafsir of Surah, it says يَعِدُهُمْ مَا لَا يُنَجِّسْ وَيُمَنِّيهِمْ مَا لَا يَنَالُ. He promises what he does not fulfill, and he gives hope about what they cannot achieve. In Surah Ibrahim, وَقَالَ الشَّيْطَانُ لَمَّا قُضِيَ الْأَمْرُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَعَدَكُمْ وَعْدَ الْحَقِّ وَوَعَدْتُكُمْ فَأَخْلَفْتُكُمْ وَمَا كَانَ لِي عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ سُلْطَانٍ إِلَّا أَنْ دَعَوْتُكُمْ فَاسْتَجَبْتُمْ لِي. Shaitan will say, once the matter has been settled, God has given you a true promise, while I have both promised you and then broken my word with you. This is what Shaitan says. I have no authority, I had no authority over you, except that I appealed to you and you responded to me. So today, neither I can save you nor you can save me. وَمَا يَعِدُهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ إِلَّا غُرُورًا. Ghurur, which is deception, delusion, it is defined as إِظْهَارُ النَّفْعِ فِيمَا فِيهِ الضَّرَرُ, showing something which is harmful as beneficial. This is ghurur. Showing something harmful as beneficial, to be beneficial. Well, the prime example of that are many practices which is now common among human beings. Some of them, of course, are quite pervasive, some of them are less. There is one hadith here about يَعِدُهُمْ وَيُمَنِّيهِمْ, which I leave it for our next session because it's a bit long. Just I mentioned one hadith from Nahjul Balagha, in Sermon 42 of Nahjul Balagha. أيها الناس إن أخوف ما أخاف عليكم اثنان اتباع الهوى وطول الأمل فأما اتباع الهوى فيصد عن الحق وأما طول الأمل فينسى الآخرة. O people, what I fear for you the most are two things: pursuing your desires, اتباع الهوى, which is the false desires. And the false desires are what Shaitan prompts us to do. So it's following the wa'ad of Shaitan, اتباع الهوى, and وطول الأمل, and having prolonged hopes. يمنيهم, giving them false hopes. Because pursuing one's desires impedes one from the truth, فَأَمَّا اتِّبَاعُ الْهَوَى فَيَصُدُّ عَنِ الْحَقِّ. And having prolonged hopes make one forget the hereafter. That is the truest thing. If we have long hopes in my life for another 100 years, then suddenly I forget our hereafter. The hadith, let me just quickly mention the other hadith we have. We can just go about 1 minute over time in Majalis from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. I just read the English. When God revealed the verse, and those who, when they commit an indecent act or wrong themselves, remember Allah and plead Allah's forgiveness for their sins. When Iblis heard this verse, he was very upset, saying that, well, whatever we do will be undone. Well, because then people do istighfar. When they commit an indecent act or wrong themselves, and then they remember God, they ask forgiveness, Allah will forgive them. So what are we doing here? He said to his followers or to his clients, what are we doing here then? So he says that Iblis summoned with his loudest shout his subordinate demons. And they gathered and said, our master, what have happened? Why have you called us? He said, this verse has been revealed. Who can undo this? Who can actually make this statement of God, this verse, ineffective? Who can make it ineffective? Well, a couple of them stood up and offered ways to counter it and they rendered ineffective in his mind, and said, no, these are not useful. And then a demon called Al-Waswas al-Khannas, the sneak tempter, rose and said, I am your man for this. He said, how? He said, I will make promises and give them false hope so that they commit sins and they forget istighfar. I will make them promises and give them false hope. فَإِذَا أَوْقَعُوا الْخَطِيئَ أَنْسَيْتُهُمُ الْإِسْتِغْفَارِ. And once they did it, I will make them forget istighfar, asking forgiveness. And Iblis said, yes, you are the man for it. And he appointed him to the job. Inshallah, Allah protect us from the deceptions of shaitan. رَبَّنَا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.